Hello, Star Trek fans. Welcome to ReBingeIT. This is the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we are rebinging Star Trek Voyager from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 3, Episode 23, Distant Origin. This episode aired April 30th, 1997. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about last week's episode, which was Real Life?
Real Bad would be a better title for it.
The least real episode of the Doctor with a hollow family. Well, we've had some clunkers over the last few weeks.
Yes, absolute boat anchor of clunkers.
A little bit of warning about this one. Not a clunker. Settle in, because we may be here a bit longer than usual because I have many pages of notes.
There's probably going to be a lot of overanalysis. This might run long.
Yeah, and we're recording at night, which is weird. We haven't done that since Prodigy. Remember, we used to do that on Friday nights,
Yep.
Well, let's see how it goes.
Okay.
In the cold open, we open on a familiar landscape of the California desert with a volcano in the background.
Not that far off reality.
We've definitely been here before. The camera slowly moves us through some rocks and into a cave where a shining flashlight finds something on the ground. The person with the flashlight picks it up, and we see the remnants of a yellow Starfleet uniform, or gold, depending on your perspective, I guess. We get a side view of the alien with the flashlight, and it's a full head of lizard skin and kind of a flat nose.
Yep.
Another alien, further into the cave, finds some bones nearby, and now we realize it's the guy we lost back in Basics Part 2, when Seska and the Kazon dumped off the Voyager crew here.
Yep. Or the other guy. There was the guy who fell off the ledge when the thing ate him.
Oh, two people. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I only remember, I want to say Hogan, or was it Casey? Hogan/Casey. It was one of those two.
It was Hogan. I don't think it was Casey.
Well, they look the same.
Casey was B'Elanna's punching bag.
I know, and I get them mixed up, but I can't picture which one was which. So they're the same. The aliens kind of make clicking noises at each other, and then one asks the other if there's a genetic match. And the first alien is like, yes, let's bring this back to the ship. We get a better look at the aliens now, and we see they have, like, gigantic hands, but with only maybe 3 fingers and a thumb.
Huge claws.
Yeah, big talons at the end of the fingers. And they don't have hair, but the backs of their heads kind of go back into a dramatic peak.
It's a nice touch here that when we first see them, they start in the alien language, which is like a clicking sound, and then they switch to English.
Yes.
It's a nice little directing touch.
Yeah, so we know they don't really speak English,
Yeah.
Well, alien number 1 says they may have made the biggest discovery in Voth history, and we go into the opening credits.
Oh, yeah.
After the credits, we see the outside of a spaceship that we've not seen before.
Yep, kind of cool looking.
Our 2 aliens are on this ship now trying to reconstruct Hogan/Casey's bones.
Yeah.
We see these 2 aliens they're like differently colored. One has sort of mustard color hands, and while his face and head are sort of pinkish brown, there are hints of that mustard color on his head, on the scales. It's beautiful makeup work. This whole episode is just beautiful.
The Voth characters in this look amazing.
Yeah. We did not skimp on this,
I do feel sorry for the actors, because can you imagine how many hours they spent in makeup? And there's a few scenes where they're holding things, and it looks like they're sort of stuck on the hands.
Yeah, because it would be very difficult to use those giant hands, Yeah.
Well, remember, once I made a pair of Talon gloves, and they looked great, but you literally could not hold anything in your hand.
No, you couldn't hold anything, Now that I think about it, it's similar to the Jem'Hadar, right?
Oh, yes, yeah.
I mean, apart from the thing on the backs of their heads, but it is kind of similar. And I mean, it's not just makeup, it's masks, right? They're all wearing masks,
Oh, yeah, there's a ton of latex on their faces to get that to work.
I would think so. Well, looking at the bones, the aliens note the opposable thumbs of their find, recognizing the species as technically advanced, but the skull is 22% smaller than their own, so probably dumber. They compare their analysis mostly to themselves, which I suppose is what you would do. They say, like, it's missing some lobe, making their sense of smell rudimentary.
Right.
They're both shocked to find this creature is warm-blooded and non-saurian. A quick Google search tells me saurians are any large reptile, especially a dinosaur or other distinct form. Alien number 1 says, the genetic markers we share with this alien are undeniable. We are definitely related, however distantly.
Yep.
They wonder what this creature was doing in this part of space, and they consider maybe he has a ship with crewmates. The uniform fragment makes them think these creatures have replication technology and also some kind of social infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Alien number 1 looks at the skull of Casey/Hogan and says, did your eyes see the planet of our origin? He wonders if it was beautiful, covered by oceans or sand. He says his ship and the people on it hold the key to where his people are from. Alien number 2 says he'll try to find a research ship to help with the search, but alien number 1 says that's not enough. We need to go to the Ministry of Elders. Alien number 2 thinks that's a bit risky.
Yes.
But alien number 1 is like, there's no time to waste. So we're setting course for what he calls the city ship. And then at the end of this scene, we learn finally some names. Alien number 2 is named Veer, and alien number 1 is simply in this scene called Professor.
Yeah.
So I'll use those names from here.
Well, I like how eager the professor is.
He's very keen.
Yeah, his approach to the Ministry of Elders. But I think as we find out, he should have listened to his assistant. That's why you should have a good assistant.
Yeah. The warnings were real.
Right. And I really enjoyed this scene because there's a couple of things in it that I think are great. First of all, I loved all the hypothesizing. I think this is the Sauron version of overanalysis.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, they're arranging the skeleton and they put it with 3 fingers.
Yeah.
Which, matches their own, the sort of, you'd have this inbuilt bias to think, well, we have 3 fingers. Well, this race probably does as well.
Right. Especially with the genetic markers matching.
Right, right. We also see a bizarre little bit of a dark sense of humor when he talks to the skull and says, did your eyes see this homeworld? And then makes a joke of saying, oh, he's at a loss for words.
Yeah.
Well, they're obviously intelligent, have a dark sense of humor. These sound like fun people.
This is a great opening, and it's probably quite risky to open your show without any of your main characters.
Yes.
Right? But it's really drawn me in pretty quickly, and the acting is very good right from the beginning. And like I said, the makeup is so good. And if you've been watching the show, you see the link once they find the bones. Yeah.
It is also funny that this scene, well, actually, pretty much all the scenes with the Voth are well acted.
Oh, yeah. Excellent.
You managed to do that through that makeup?
I think we talked about this once before, but I wonder if sometimes it almost helps you focus more because they probably can't see that well, and they probably can't really easily come out of character because they're in that makeup. Once you're in it for the day, right? So I don't know, maybe it's actually helpful.
Interesting.
But all of these performances, and we haven't even seen them all yet, but they're all going to be good from here,
I'll also just add one other thing.
Yeah.
The professor says about the ministry, we simply have to open their eyes to the truth.
Yeah.
And my note here says, ooh, that never works well.
No. Unless somebody's looking for the truth, they already have it. That's the problem,
Again, he should have listened to Veers.
Well, we go now to the professor making his case to another lizard creature all dressed in red.
Oh, you missed the giant crocodile ship. We got the space shot of this great ship that literally, the front of it looks like a crocodile.
Yeah, the city ship. It does look like a crocodile floating in space. It has like a front sort of flat, rounded part. Yeah.
Or is that an alligator? We'll probably get emails about that.
I can't ever remember which one is which.
So, into overanalysis. Did they choose this shape because it has some sort of like cultural significance or reference back to something else? Like if like humans designing a ship and they made it bird-like or like a bird of prey or a tiger or some kind of big cat, something like that, because it projects, certainly for humans, this element of a powerful creature.
Well, it's interesting to think about because, and again, maybe we're jumping ahead a little bit, but if they knew that was their origin, that's one thing, but they don't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Because they evolved and then left the planet, right? So we're too early to talk about this.
Maybe there are parts of the doctrine or pieces left over of, mythology or creatures that they know about.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the people making the show definitely did that, but whether or not the Voth did that, I'm not sure. We go now to the professor making his case.
Yep.
He's saying, for millions of years, our people have believed that we were the first intelligent beings to evolve in this region of space, the first race. And this assumption underlies everything that we hold dear. That belief has been questioned by scientists and philosophers, and now there's proof of the distant origin theory on the table in front of you, where we see Casey/Hogan's bones.
Oh dear. He's questioning core beliefs.
Yeah.
That never goes well.
He says these remains demonstrate that we originated elsewhere in the galaxy, that we evolved on a different planet and traveled to this space millions of years ago.
Yeah.
The leader in red now speaks. She seems to be a fair amount older, and obviously she's the boss of something, like she's the prime elder or something.
The prime minister, maybe.
Yes. She's like, oh, a pile of bones, very sarcastically.
So this race also has extreme sarcasm as well as a dark sense of humor.
Definitely. But the professor continues, these bones are from a species found nowhere in known space, and yet we share 47 genetic markers. He intends to prove we evolved on the very same planet that he did, the long-lost world of the distant origin theory.
Yeah.
The professor says we must find a living member of his kind. He's created a computer extrapolation of what he thinks they look like, and we see a human-like creature in a Starfleet uniform, but it's green and has 3 fingers, just like these guys.
You're modeling something on what you think would be sort of like the baselines, the normal.
Sure. He says we're looking for a race of bipedal endotherms who are spacefaring, but technologically limited.
Oh, yeah. And her little assistant is like, oh, you mean mammals?
Yes, this is obviously a problem.
Yeah.
The makeup it's just so incredible here. The professor has multiple colors on his face, while the lady in red is all one color. Maybe it's because she has no emotions, because they talk about emotions causing color of their scales. But I think it's because she's supposed to be quite old. Plus,
she's also from a different subspecies called the Bigotosaurus.
Oh, no. The Mastersaurus.
Master Raceosaurus.
The Master Raceosaurus. The minister thinks his tail is colorful, but has learned that he had to pay someone to find the remains, so perhaps he was the victim of a hoax.
Which is, a valid question, yeah.
He denies that, but then she says what she really cares about.
Yeah.
She wonders if he's thought about the wider implications of his theory. By challenging doctrine, he's challenging everything their people believe about themselves, their history, their rightful claim to this region.
Yes.
Even the authority of this ministry itself, it's now a lie. It's like that escalated really quickly.
Well, I feel that what I think this is really important in this scene is they really show you the professor just doesn't get politics.
Oh, totally.
He is focused on, I'm about the truth and about understanding and evolving our understanding of the universe. And he doesn't understand that underlying this whole ministry is politics.
Remember early on in the pandemic when a scientist would just try to say something?
Oh, yeah.
That they felt was true and had been proven and was being proven by people dying all around them. And then some politician would just get up there and pretend like they knew something, and the people would believe the politician and not the scientist.
Right.
I mean, it's so ridiculously common. This episode is like, you can air this today. This episode absolutely just falls the same, or it lands the same across the population.
This episode is still horribly relevant, and it shouldn't be. It should be science fantasy by now, but...
Yeah, not so much. Well, the professor denies that's what he's doing. He, however, does say some of their beliefs would have to be reevaluated. The lady in red says they'll consider his request for a ship, even though it's clear they won't.
Again, politics.
Yeah. She presses a button that makes a little gong noise, and the meeting ends. The professor tells his friend he failed to appreciate the level of ignorance he'd be facing. He tells Veer to go off and find their supporters. And then a young woman who is standing in the back of the room approaches the professor, calling him father. She's concerned the ministry didn't take his message well, and he really doesn't have as much support as he thinks.
Yeah, again, this is somebody else in his life who really seems to get it more than he does.
He asks if she believes him, and she's definitely skeptical. She says it's hard to believe their ancestors came from somewhere else, and they don't even belong here.
Yeah, they have this weird sense of where they belong.
Yeah, why would you jump to this conclusion? I mean, if you've been in this part of space for millions of years, it's
millions.
I don't understand that. I mean, I guess I get the questioning the origin story, but I don't understand why you're questioning your right to be in this part of space where you have existed for millions of years.
Yeah.
Well, Professor Dad is disappointed in his daughter. He's concerned that she'll carry on in ignorance, believing in an ancient myth.
Yep.
Though again, it's hard to understand why either way is bad. But anyway, I did think the scene with the daughter was not useful.
I disagree. I think it was demonstrating that even within his family, possibly his closest supporter, his daughter, is saying to him,
are you sure?
Are you sure?
Yeah.
And is also, I think, calling caution. Yeah. She's being, like Veers, is being more realistic. Of, Dad, you're butting against entrenched hierarchy that has existed for a very long time. It's probably not going to go well unless you have significant backing and support.
Yeah, I see your point. I guess that it's meaningful in that it's not just Veer who goes off and then comes back and says, oh, you don't have any supporters, right? Because then he could have been lying. But here, she's saying, I think you are mistaken.
Well, hopefully she doesn't have any agenda. She isn't trying to climb the ladder of the hierarchy of the science institutes.
Well, that we don't know. Well, we don't know. She might be.
Yeah, that's true. But she might just be somebody giving him warning as a loving family member of, Dad, be careful.
Yeah.
I am worried about Voth's society from this meeting because he says a couple of things. One is the common people. Mm-hmm. So is this a caste-based, classed society? A social hierarchy of who you are? And then the piece about questioning core beliefs and his comment about them clinging to mythology. It's like, oh, is this some kind of class-based theocracy? That even has, I expect there's also an inquisition hanging around somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can see the threads of what they're trying to do in the story about religion.
Yeah.
And the clash between sort of religion and science, which is something quite common within Star Trek. And it's an easy way to do it when you don't have to rely on existing Earth religions. You're not offending anybody.
Right.
But you know how on Deep Space Nine, we would talk a lot about, they'll say something about an alien race and it will be true of all of the aliens, or it will be true of all of the planet.
Right.
And we would go, that's hard for us to comprehend because people just from country to country or in the U.S. from state to state, city to city are so different.
Yeah.
It's comical to think the entire planet believes anything. So it's hard to look at this and go, do they all believe this? And I think it's important that they call it doctrine because it rather than religion, because it's sort of the basis of their entire society is the claim, right?
Right.
So I think, yes, that's what they're telling us, what you asked, right? They're telling us that's what this society is about. And I think it's good that they don't go overboard in trying to explain more because there's a lot in this episode with what we have.
Right, agreed. Yeah. They can just use doctrine as a great shorthand.
It could be that there's more than the Voth, because she does say Saurians. So maybe there are other people. I don't know what they really are, but maybe there's other groups, not just the Voth. Maybe the Voth is the ruling party.
Oh,
or the majority.
The ruling class, the aristocracy.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Based on some of the things they said, right? That's possible. And what we learn later, like about all the genetic markers and stuff, I think also implies that there could be other races within the same species.
Yeah.
I do think it's unlikely that they were breeding with other species based on what we learn later. Later, Veer rushes in to see the professor saying, we need to leave now. There are rumors that the ministry has seized the professor's research and plans to detain him on charges of heresy against doctrine.
Oh, heresy. Yep. There's definitely an inquisition.
He says the supporters are frightened and no one will back him right now. So the professor says he'll have to carry on his own. When he tries to send Veer away for his own safety, Veer declines.
Always such a good idea. If somebody has a scientific idea that conflicts with your current doctrine, persecute them and their supporters. Always works well.
I mean, 2020. Well, the good news is they have some clues on how to find the people they seek because the professor found a microscopic identification code on the uniform fragment they found. He pulls it up on the screen and we dramatically zoom in to see the words USS Voyager.
We're looking for something called Voyager.
Yeah, it was good.
Loved it.
Now we have a montage of Veer and the professor searching for Voyager throughout the Delta Quadrant. They meet someone who has heard of Voyager eventually, and they help change the picture of the green guy to look a little bit more human.
Yeah, they add the correct number of fingers.
And hair, yeah. if they were looking for Picard, there wouldn't have been any here.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Well, they find a tricorder at some point and also a canister of warp plasma from Voyager's engines, and this allows them to scan space for a matching signature.
I don't remember an episode where they gave away warp plasma. Oh, maybe they just traded it.
They could have traded it because they were talking about the station at the edge of the Necrit Expanse, and that's where they were trading.
Yeah.
There was the whole thing of Neelix trying to steal it or the bad guys wanting him to steal it, and he didn't. But that doesn't mean they didn't trade it with someone else.
Yeah, with someone else, yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose the tricorder could have come from when the Kazon had the ship. I mean, they like stealing things, so...
True, yeah. Now we have a cute little scene where we learn Veer has the hots for the professor's daughter. And we also see the professor has a little bug lamp on his desk with tiny bugs flying around it. And at one point, he flicks out a long tongue and grabs a mouthful of bugs. That was unnecessary.
It's like a bowl of popcorn. It's their version of that.
Oh, yeah.
This scene also made me worry a little bit because, well, first of all, the professor says to Veers he should know his place. Oh, yeah, that's really great.
Yeah.
And then talks about how his family, they're designated to traditionally mate with another family. To me, this sounds like a European monarchy level of inbreeding.
Yeah.
Clearly, there is a very rigid social structure behind their society.
Well, but it's not that rigid because he says, like, change is okay or whatever it is that he says here. So it's not that rigid.
But this doctor is kind of a radical progressive in their society.
Yeah, that's true.
And he talks about the tradition. So anytime you get that, you get people stuck in a rut.
Well, suddenly their scanners locate Voyager 90 light years away, and they're able to travel in transwarp much faster than Voyager, so they can easily catch up with them.
It gives the impression it's like minutes.
Yeah, and they're also able to use spatial displacement in order to disappear from Voyager's primitive sensors.
I feel there's a little bit of hubris with these people as well.
With very little info, they're making some assumptions.
Yeah.
The professor wants to observe and make sure that they're non-violent before making contact. I mean, that's a good idea. Janeway wouldn't do that.
Yeah. That's very un-Voyager.
Yeah, that's very non-Janeway. Now we go to Voyager and a crew member walking down the hallway right past these two aliens. The professor says interphase is stable and he pokes at a device on his arm. Veer comments on the smell of the creatures and the professor says, well, they are mammals after all.
Well, some mammals have highly evolved senses of smell. So, I guess the problem is if they lost all their history, they would have no idea about
how smelly we are.
Well, how mammals evolved.
Right. But this quadrant is full of mammals.
Well, as far as we know, yeah.
But he does say later that we don't really get along with anyone else, so I think everybody's keeping their distance.
Yeah, and the Kazon smell pretty bad.
Oh, geez. Well, they stop at a console in the hallway and immediately download Voyager's database. It just takes him like a second.
Okay, that made me laugh out loud.
Me too.
Oh, simple binary system. I downloaded their database, like, instantly.
Oh, like, you know what? It's like in Jurassic Park when the girl goes, I know this, a Unix system.
It's a Unix. Oh, we still laugh about that.
Might be a connection to that as we keep going here. B'Elanna and Tom now walk by, engaged in some light banter, and the two aliens follow to observe. Veer asks if this is courting behavior, and the professor says yes, and calls it crude interplay, as the two of them sort of flirt about some Klingon martial arts program that they're going to share later.
That was laugh out loud funny.
Yeah, that was funny. Again, like one example. We have one example of this, and we're making assumptions.
Oh, yeah.
Off to the bridge, and a very strange camera angle opens the scene from above of the captain entering.
There is a lot of odd camera angles in this episode.
Yeah, I was reading that there was maybe some concern that it's a heavy talking episode and that originally they'd wanted it to be a big action episode, but in the end, that's not what it is, right?
No.
And so maybe they were trying to just sort of add something interesting to it with these different camera angles.
Well, it certainly works. It gives you a different sense of perspective, which I also think works well with this idea of these are alien scientists investigating this other ship.
Yeah.
So I think sort of the slight disconnection that the odd camera angles gives you works.
Right. Well, there are just normal Voyager things happening on the bridge. The
Yep.
details don't matter as much as Veer and the professor standing on the bridge unnoticed.
And like commenting on everything that's going on.
Yeah, like they assume the social structure is hierarchical and the society may be matriarchal because all the males on the bridge are subordinate to a female.
That was funny.
It's like, that's a broad generalization.
Yeah.
It's not a great one. I mean, because you're on a ship and someone is in charge.
Right.
Again, sample size of 1.
Yeah. Surely these scientists, they have a social structure. So wouldn't this be parallel to things they've seen before? Veers is obviously subordinate to the professor, and you would just go, oh, well, maybe they're in charge.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they're doing what they were doing with the fingers and
Yeah.
seeing themselves in it.
Oh, interesting.
Well, we got cocky because Harry suddenly detects spatial fluctuations on the bridge.
Never underestimate Harry.
He recognizes it quickly as cloaking technology, and Janeway calls intruder alert, and we go to red alert very quickly.
See, this is where that stupid Harry episode didn't work. Harry is really smart and really good at what he does. And why would he be wanting to feel like he's something special?
Yeah.
We've got a highly advanced alien race with highly advanced cloaking technology, and Harry is like, I figured it out in about 2 minutes.
Stop polluting my good episode with that terrible episode. Keep that out of here.
Yeah. Everybody just cut that last bit. Forget we said it.
Forget that happened.
Yeah.
The aliens realize what's happening and they try to bolt, but Tuvok has erected a level 10 containment field around the bridge. Janeway grabs a phaser, ready to shoot. She can't see anything, but she's ready to shoot.
Yes.
But the aliens quickly figure out how to get through the force field, and they disappear from the bridge. Harry says now they're on deck 2 in the mess hall. Chakotay and Tuvok run to the turbo lift with Janeway tossing Chuckles her phaser. Very smooth.
Okay, that was very cool, but it also made me wince because you do not toss weapons.
No, because he could have grabbed it and pressed the button.
Yeah, to me, that's like that's a basic firearms safety training thing. And it's like, yeah it looks cool, but it's like, good. At the same time, I'm going, ooh.
No. She had the safety on. It's fine. She's a known cautious person. In the mess hall now, Neelix is looking around for intruders, but of course he doesn't see them.
Yeah.
And they're standing right in front of him. Veer tells the professor it may be time to make contact. Up on the bridge, Harry's done some analysis on how to disrupt the cloaking technology with the phaser's dispersion frequency.
Once again, Harry, genius.
So the team rushes into the mess hall from different sides, so they've got the aliens trapped, and they quickly find the spatial fluctuations, and Chuckles fires at the aliens, disrupting their cloak.
Yeah.
Veer starts to panic, and he shoots a little, dart of some kind, which seems to come out of his hand or his arm, into Chakotay's shoulder, sending him to the ground.
Yeah, it's like a quill.
Tuvok shoots Veer, and the professor quickly moves over to Chuckles, but before Tuvok can shoot the professor, he beams away with Chuckles. Veer looks up from the floor with several phasers being pointed at him. Again, an interesting perspective and kind of funny.
Yep. I'll point out here that, once again, Veers is being the smart one. Because when they're starting to detect them, he says, perhaps we should explain ourselves to them.
Why don't we just say hi?
Make first contact. And the professor ignores him.
Yep. In sickbay, the doctor is scanning Veer and asks Kes to do a DNA analysis. The doctor tries to talk to Veer, who clicks a little and then seems to shut down, going into some kind of protective hibernation.
Yes, very useful trick.
Janeway tells Tuvok to examine Veer's technology and tells the doctor to figure out how to wake him up.
You know, if you've got technology 20 million years ahead of yours, there's got to be some pretty good stuff in that.
Gotta be.
I guess the problem would be trying to figure it out. I mean, if it's, if it's so advanced.
And not compatible with any of your power sources and whatever.
Right. And maybe you can't even scan it.
Now we jump to Chakotay on the alien ship. The professor has him within a containment field, and he tells Chakotay to stay calm. Chuckles asks why he invaded Voyager, but the professor says it wasn't an invasion, it was research. We just wanted to learn more about your species. He says we meant no harm. I'm a molecular paleontologist. He says Veer panicked when he shot Chakotay. The professor calls Chakotay a living specimen of human, and I thought, with that line, we were going in the direction of him, collecting and dissecting Chakotay, but that's not what happens. The professor says he's been studying their computer database, and he pulls up an image of Earth, asking if that's the planet of his origin. Chakotay says yes, and then he asks if any of his kind are on Earth. But Chuckles says, maybe drop the force field so we can have a proper conversation. He says, I'm a scientist too, and I won't bite. So the professor does just that, and we have introductions, finally learning the professor's name is Gegen. Chakotay says, all right, let's talk about Earth.
I liked here how Chakotay talks the Doctor into holding a civilized conversation. I thought it was very Starfleet, very Federation of Chakotay's trying to reach out and make first contact with this race.
And very consistent with Chakotay, right?
Yes.
Even when they are interacting with very hostile other species, he's able to usually de-escalate the situation. And so I like that they used him in that same way here.
This is good writing. This is a character following the characterization that they've built up over the series. Not doing something wildly out of character.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah.
Weren't you expecting, though, when he showed him the picture of Earth, because it's the Delta Quadrant, Hagen was going to say, yes, we wish to reconquer our homeworld and devour all the tasty mammals.
Well, that's one of the things that's so good about this episode. It doesn't go kind of in any of the directions you're expecting.
Right.
Right? And that's a good example. Like, that's not what this is about at all.
Yeah.
Back on Voyager now, the Doctor has made a shocking discovery, telling Janeway the alien has 47 genetic markers identical to human DNA. He ran a search for the markers on Earth's paleontological database. That's a word I can't say.
Say that after a couple of beers.
And those same markers appear in hundreds of Earth species dating back tens of millions of years. Suddenly, Janeway has a very different attitude about what's going on, and she and the Doctor go to Holodeck 2 for some sciencing.
The look on Mulgrew's face.
Yeah.
Perfect.
She's like, oh, a science problem.
That's obviously something that really piques her interest.
She's got multiple scenes in this episode with a phaser. She gets to science. Yeah, she's having a good day.
I love Mulgrew's portrayal of Janeway.
Just in general?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, yes.
She really brings this character to life.
For sure.
The things that interest Captain Janeway, the way she shows that enthusiasm.
Now on the holodeck, we ask the computer to analyze the genetic markers, finding ancestors common to both human and the alien DNA. The computer displays genus Aeropus, an ancient amphibian, sort of like an alligator, but with a smaller head and longer legs. It's the last common ancestor of cold and warm-blooded organisms.
Yeah.
Next, Janeway asks the computer for the most highly evolved cold-blooded organism to develop from the Ariops. That's hard to say. And the computer displays the genus Hadrosaur, which is basically a dinosaur.
Yep.
Not much larger than the captain, but seems to be bipedal, or at least standing up on its back legs. And it has a distinct growth coming out of the back of the skull, like the aliens we've encountered.
Yes.
She says the Hadrosaur vanished when a mass extinction occurred at the end of the Cretaceous period.
About 66 million years ago.
Or the Jurassic period, if you're Joey from Friends. That's a Friends reference. Janeway wonders if maybe the Hadrosaur didn't actually die off and some survived and evolved. She asked the computer to run a genome projection algorithm of the Hadrosaur evolving over 65 million years. And not surprisingly, we now have our sickbay alien. Dude is a dinosaur.
I think it's the Doctor that says, that creature napping in sickbay is a dinosaur.
And Janeway wonders why we've never seen this guy in any natural history museum.
Oh, that was great. I do have to point out.
Yeah.
So they make the computer evolve this dinosaur, and we end up with basically like the guy in sickbay, pretty much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So why on Threshold when, we evolve humans, we end up with salamanders?
Did it go backwards? It went the other direction. Maybe, that was the thing. Maybe they were actually devolving, not evolving, and they just got it all mixed up.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh, there's so much going on in this episode. We're only halfway through.
This is the bit I love as a science fiction concept.
Sure.
That we have a race that are dinosaurs, that are 66 million years old.
It was funny when we were watching this, because normally we don't watch the episodes together, but sometimes, and we watched it the first time together. And I can't explain why I do not remember Voyager. I just don't know. It was so long ago. So many other things have happened. But when it got to this scene, I was like, oh, they're dinosaurs. Like, I was shocked. As if I'd never seen it before. But it was great. It was a great scene. It was a great reveal. Yes. I probably had the same exact reaction the first time I watched it.
Yep.
Yeah, it was really, really cool.
I could have done this episode without rewatching it.
The things you remember and the things I remember are not the same.
Very different.
Yeah. For example, I remember what we planned to do yesterday, but I do not remember Voyager from 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Over to Professor Gegen's ship. He and Chakotay are bonding.
Yeah, it's kind of nice.
Chuckle says if a saurian species had developed a language and technology, you'd think they would have left something behind on Earth. Yes, but maybe it evolved on an isolated continent that was completely destroyed by a natural disaster.
Yeah.
He says evidence of your people could be at the bottom of the ocean. Gegen says obviously not all of them died off. Some developed spacefaring tech and got off the planet. He says our true origins lost over the eons and replaced by doctrine and the myth that we were the first race. Yeah, but you still could have been first.
Yeah.
Why are we so stuck on this?
If you evolved 66 million years ago and you still have a functional society and a race,
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
I mean, maybe stop in and chat with the changelings. Maybe they were before that. I don't know. God, these two would hate each other.
Oh, yeah.
We were first. No, we were first. No, we were first.
We are the superior race. No, we are.
Would the dinosaurs defeat the founders?
Oh, completely. I think the founders are tens of thousands of years old.
Oh. So see? They are first.
Yeah, these guys are literally millions of years old.
I just don't understand why we are so stuck on this. You're probably still first.
Right. Even races that maybe came up at the same time, if there were, how many are still around?
Yeah, they probably died off. Oh, and that's sort of a point Chakotay makes later.
Yeah, well, you remember the races who had those portals that could portal anywhere? They appeared in TNG, and then the Jem'Hadar had control of one in DS9. They died out like 500,000 years ago or so.
Yeah.
So I think the fact you're still around is kind of a big win.
Yeah, I just don't know what we're complaining about. It's cute that Chakotay is the first mammal that Gegen has gotten to know. That kind of makes me laugh.
Well, I think this might also be a little bit of this race's problem.
Well, yes, because...
They're kind of bigoted.
And if this area of space is your domain, who are you talking to? Nobody, obviously just themselves. We're not talking to anybody.
Right. And Gegen makes the point of they consider mammals, and probably most of the other races, as a lower form of life. I mean...
Well, they probably are. If they've been developing for 65 million years, they probably are.
Well, I think maybe only on a technological basis.
Yeah.
Their society seems to be more reminiscent of something from the 1300s on Earth.
And also, those giant hands cannot be useful. It must mostly be clubs.
Yeah.
It's really funny to me, this concept that the dinosaurs just can't get along with anyone. That was a crack up to me in this episode.
It is kind of funny.
Well, Chakotay, of course, now that we figured all this out, wants to return to Voyager, but the professor says he's already made arrangements to meet his supporters on the 4th colony. He says he's being charged with heresy against doctrine, and he needs enough supporters for the ministry to listen to him. Back on Voyager, Tuvok and Tom are playing around with the aliens' cloaking technology. It seems to push whatever is wearing it slightly out of phase with their space-time continuum.
So this sounds more like the experimental Romulan cloaking technology that went wrong in TNG with Geordie and Roe.
Again, I go back to the Jem'Hadar. They also had personal cloaks.
Yes, that was a natural ability, though.
And it wasn't about space-time, yeah. Well, now there is a rumble, and we jump from wherever Tuvok and Tom are to the bridge, where Harry is reading a massive space-time displacement, and the city ship we saw earlier appears.
Yep.
Janeway calls for red alert, but it doesn't really matter because the big ship locks on with an energy beam and basically shuts off Voyager and beams the entire ship inside of the city ship.
Even though Voyager has its shields up. It doesn't matter. We're just beaming you in.
That will make you feel very small and insignificant.
Yeah, well, first of all, that ship is enormous.
Yeah.
And then just the level of technology and ability that they have to just shut Voyager off like it was a toy.
I wonder what happened when the Borg ran into these guys.
It would end very badly for the Borg.
I suppose the Borg, avoided them. Because they're like, no.
Like the plague.
Yeah. Harry tries to maintain control of the ship, but everything goes dark.
Yep.
Janeway tells the bridge crew to arm themselves. Meanwhile, Tuvok and Tom are trying to get into a Jeffries tube, but in the dark, they hear some creepy clicking.
That was a nice touch. A little bit of a horror touch there.
Yeah. Tuvok goes down when he's hit with one of those poison quills.
Yep.
Tom gets in the tube and leaves Tuvok behind at Tuvok's insistence. Back on the bridge, Janeway's got her favorite big gun, but when the Voth beam on board, none of their phasers work. And shockingly, Janeway doesn't start swinging her phaser around.
See, this is where projectile weapons would actually come in useful, because maybe they have a dampening field that can stop the phasers from working, but good old explosives.
Well, yeah, like those quills are working.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
See, I think Janeway should have some weapon choices.
We've seen this before, right? With an alien that shoots quills.
Yeah, well, in Discovery.
Oh.
Saru.
Yeah. I don't remember the name of his aliens.
Well, we also see that these aliens, not only did they shut down everything on Voyager, they've taken out comms and they've disabled tricorders.
Oh, yeah. It's scary. Well, meanwhile, back on Professor Gegen's ship, he's received a message from the Ministry of Elders saying they've captured Voyager, and if he doesn't return to face his accusers, they'll kill everyone on board and destroy his evidence.
My note here says, freaking zealots.
Chuckles asks what he's going to do, and the professor says he won't be responsible for all those deaths. He knows that if he goes back now without any support, his theory will be discredited. But Chuckles says, you still have me as evidence. But I feel like if you're all in one place, it's easier for them to just destroy everything and pretend like it never happened.
The professor fell out of a window.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the professor decides to head to the city ship. And now one of the dinosaurs is interrogating Janeway, and she's being as cooperative as you would expect.
Yeah. Oh, and so wonderfully flippant.
When asked where she comes from, she says, apparently, the same place you come from, Earth. Burn.
Oh, beautiful delivery as well.
This does not endear her to her captors, but it is funny. Down in engineering, Tom has made use of the dinosaur's cloaking device, and he knocks out one of the Voth and starts trying to get control of weapons. He calls Janeway to say he could fire torpedoes through the side of the city ship, and she tells him to fire, and tells her interrogator to hold on to something. It's a very cute scene.
Janeway's in her element there.
It almost seems like we're going to get a little win, but those dinos are smart, and they manage to take back control before Tom can fire.
Yep.
Like, you should have just shot without asking when you had a chance.
Did you really need to call the captain? Couldn't you just, fired and then called the captain?
But also, the comms didn't work a minute ago. I just realized. And now they worked. Maybe Tom did something to fix them. They didn't cover that, but he must have.
I think that's what alerted the dinos to the fact he was messing around down there.
Oh, could have been. Well, Janeway says, nice try, Tom. The interrogator now calls and says the captain is not being cooperative and he needs an interrogation surgeon to help.
That does not sound good.
A surgeon with those giant dinosaur hands is very scary because they can't use little tiny scalpels. They're only going to have giant things to use.
Pair of shears.
Dinosaur-sized things.
I wonder what's happening to the doctor at this point.
Probably shut down.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Command tells him it's no longer necessary because Gegen has turned himself in.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is, I'm on, I don't know, it feels like page 20 of my notes, and we haven't even got to the best part of this episode. But we're about to. Now we go to Chakotay and Gegen in front of the lady in red again.
And we go into a Star Trek trial. We haven't had one in Voyager for a long time.
No. This scene is truly incredible.
Yes.
I tried really hard not to write down every word everybody said, but let's see how I did.
I can understand why.
Even watching it twice, within 24 hours, I was just engrossed by this scene.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the lady in red says Gegen is accused of heresy against doctrine, and when she asks if he wishes to retract his claim regarding the distant origin theory, he of course says no.
Yeah.
So the hearing, or whatever this is, will proceed, and we go into a dramatic ad break.
I feel so bad for Gegen.
Yeah, there's no winning for him here.
He really doesn't get what this whole trial is about.
No.
And what the position of the elders is.
No.
It's not about truth or his research. It's about maintaining the existing social order.
Yep. The lady in red goes over what the professor has done against doctrine, including criticizing the Saurians for their resistance to truth. He tries to defend himself by saying he never directly referenced doctrine, but she says, maybe not, but the intent was clear. He, of course, is only interested in science, not the doctrine, but ultimately that's the issue, because it's the casual theorizing that they have a problem with, because they feel it undermines their entire society.
So, thought crime.
Yes, you have dangerous ideas.
Yes.
She again tries to get him to disavow his claims, and again he declines. When he claims Chakotay is proof, the lady in red says, our scientists have analyzed your data and they found no connection between the humans and the Saurians. I did my own research on YouTube. There's no connection.
Yeah, that's right.
Chakotay asks for permission to speak, and he points out that their genetic markers appear in hundreds of species throughout the history of Earth. But she says, the data isn't in question, it's the interpretation. And this sounds a lot like just the last several years in this country with people doubting science because they would rather believe lies than get out of their comfort zone or do something they don't want to do or what. It's just so ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. It's the, subjective truth. It's what I believe. That's what the truth is.
Well, we started with alternate facts early on in somebody's administration and we still have them.
Yeah. Because, if you just believe something wrong hard enough, that makes it real.
Yep. She tries to get the professor to admit the possibility his interpretation of the data may be wrong. He admits the picture is incomplete, but he is certain they're from planet Earth.
Yeah.
She presses a button with one of her crazy talon fingers again, and in comes Veer.
Oh.
Unfortunately, they have gotten to him, and he denounces the professor and his research.
Yeah. This also felt very Soviet show trial.
Yeah. Gegen asks how they persuaded Veer, asking if they threatened him. She doesn't answer. Instead, she asks again if his research was a mistake. And he says, this is pointless. This inquiry isn't about evidence. No, it never was.
No, that's no.
Chakotay tries to stop him, but he continues. He says it's about keeping her in that chair and keeping the ministry in power. Of course it is. He says he'll never retract his claims. He'd rather go to prison than help perpetuate ignorance. The lady in red suddenly shouts, we are not immigrants.
Yes.
She will not deny 20 million years of history and doctrine. This actress is incredible in this part.
Right, yes.
And she calms down and she asks again if the professor is mistaken.
You can just see the anger here. She's beyond a true believer. It doesn't matter what the reality is. It literally doesn't matter what's true, what's false, what the reality is. She knows the truth.
That's right.
Her truth. And everything else is lies.
Well, this time, Chuckle speaks up and says she's the one who's mistaken. Chakotay now gives a great speech. A great Star Trek speech.
This is the best Star Trek speech he has given in the entire series.
100%. He says she accuses the professor of wishful thinking about the distant origin theory, but she's doing the same thing, clinging to how they think about themselves and their place in the universe. He spent the last few days learning about the culture and great accomplishments of the Voth, and he reminds her that their breakthrough into transwarp was an incredible achievement, and yet the ancient doctrine predicted terrible disasters.
Yeah.
He said that held her race back for a millennia until someone took a chance, and when they succeeded, the Voth society entered a new chapter of exploration, and the doctrine was changed accordingly.
Oh, that's what I loved. He calls them out. On the previous times, they've changed their doctrine.
Hypocrisy. What a shocker.
It's completely settled unless it serves the ruling class. Then we'll change it.
He says change is difficult, and fear can delay progress. God, no truer words have ever been spoken.
Yes.
But she is unmoved. The theory appalls her. She sees her race fleeing his wretched planet, a group of pathetic refugees.
Oh.
Man, it's like, girl, you succeeded. What does it matter? What happened 200 million years ago? You won.
Yes.
But no, she is just not into this theory. She says, that means we have no birthright and no legacy.
Isn't being the first intelligent life on Earth, isn't that a bit of a legacy?
Well,
the fact you've survived 66 million years. I keep on going back to that because it's such a ridiculously long time span.
Well, right. I mean, just 1 million years is enough to be a legacy. What are you talking about? This scene is so good.
Yeah.
It's duet good.
Oh, I would agree.
This woman playing this part is absolutely amazing. And Chakotay is great in this scene. Well, Robert Beltran is great in this scene. It's so good.
I love her switch between calm and anger.
Yeah, because she uses it carefully, right? And
yes.
The time she uses it is the thing that is really upsetting her, is I am not a refugee.
Yes.
Which No, that would have been millions of years before you. You are now established. I just don't get the problem. It is such a master race problem that completely. She has.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's their own mythology and view of self-worth is tied up in this.
It's wild. Chakotay keeps trying by talking about their incredible success of surviving and getting off of Earth. He says they're ignoring the struggle and achievements of their ancestors.
Something that is important to Chakotay, his ancestry, his ancestors. And we've seen it again, following the character that they've built up. Yeah. Chakotay does, as he's grown older, does care about his ancestry. And, the idea, I think, for him, of you denying that and what they went through is, if you like, an alien concept to him, or an abhorrent concept to him, and seeing it in front of you of these people denying their own heritage.
Right. But that is not the point. The minister doesn't want to hear about the struggle. She wants to be able to say they are simply the master race. I've always been. I may have thrown in master race, but she's not interested in the struggle.
Yeah.
Because it implies they're not perfect. They fool us a little bit here by making it look like the lady in red is reconsidering after Chakotay's amazing speech. But she simply sits down and asks again if Gegen retracts his claims, and he, of course, says no. So she proclaims him guilty and sentences him to life on a detention colony, and he can no longer do science.
Truly despicable.
Well, she doesn't stop there. She also sentences Chakotay and the entire crew of Voyager to the same sentence. Gegen is outraged, but she continues saying Voyager will be destroyed. Gegen shouts, "Stop this, please."
She actually uses Voyager as a weapon against him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she knows...
She's no dummy.
Well, she knows that unlike her, Gegen has a sense of morality and ethics, and literally won't stand there and just have her punish the innocent.
Well, she's already used it against him by threatening to kill them so that he would come and turn himself in. So she knows that leverage works.
Yeah.
So of course she's going to use it again. But also, I'm not so sure she wants the evidence still floating around.
Well, yeah.
We're going to address that. Well, Gegen at this point shouts, "Stop this, please." So she turns and looks at him, asking if he has an alternative. It's an incredible moment.
Well, yeah, again, this comes back to, I feel so bad for this character. I mean, Gegen, he didn't get, he wasn't having a trial.
Oh, no. And the curtain has finally dropped on the sham for him.
Right. It's a Cardassian trial.
Yeah, it was already determined. Gegen looks at Chakotay, who looks worried at this point, and then he slowly says he's reconsidered, and he retracts his claims regarding the distant origin theory.
Yeah.
His voice kind of breaks, and he says his analysis of the data was obviously flawed. He agrees to refute his work publicly, so she says he will then move to a new area of research. Maybe metallurgical analysis will be more rewarding. He's like, maybe.
That's perfect. Just sideline him.
Then she turns to Chuckles, after being entirely unreasonable, and says, "I'm not unreasonable."
That line always comes from people who are utterly unreasonable.
Always. She tells Chuckles to return to his ship and basically get the hell out of Voth territory. She says very ominously, "It will be in your best interest if I never see you again." That's the end of another incredible Star Trek trial. Wow. Later, Gegen and Chakotay are chatting on Gegen's ship. He says he's not so great at chemistry, and his career as a metallurgical scientist is likely to be undistinguished.
Poor guy. They just sidelined him into something to keep him out the way.
He realizes he was foolish and arrogant, but Chuckles tries to tell him he was courageous like his ancestors.
Which he was.
Gegen says Chuckles has been a colleague and a friend, and he will not forget him. Chakotay then pulls out a little box and presents Gegen with a mini globe of Earth. Gegen says someday every Voth will see this as home. Chakotay beams away, and the episode ends.
Oh, I think that trial was one of the great Star Trek trials.
Agreed.
The actor who plays the First Minister, she gives him so many outs. Like when she says, "Acknowledge your mistakes." I mean, she starts off with this great softly approach. Almost like she wants to just sweep it under the rug.
Yeah.
If he'd capitulated immediately, it would have been, it was just a big mistake. And I admire Gegen for his intellectual honesty, but with these people, that's exactly how you end up as a martyr. I think this trial they're basing it on what happened to Galileo when there was an inquisition into him.
Yeah. Oh, there was something on Memory Alpha about that it was Galileo. Yeah.
The Earth is flat. It doesn't go around the sun.
This, the actress, by the way, her name is Concetta Tomei. I looked her up thinking, wow, she must have been one of the greatest actresses of our generation. No, I mean, she wasn't in that many things that I recognize, but she's incredible in this episode.
Great performance, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Professor Gegen was played by Henry Woronicz. Both really good performances.
Agreed.
Before we go to overanalysis, I'll just say, it's been such a bumpy ride of crappy episodes in this weird part of season 3.
Agreed.
To the point that I was like, why can't we have any nice things? I don't understand. And this episode proves we can have nice things. This is back to this is the Star Trek I love. Here we are able to do it. And I'm so happy because, God, the last couple episodes have been so terrible.
Well, it's been bad, good, terrible, good, terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then amazing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so finally we need to go to overanalysis. Okay. So how many pages of overanalysis do you have? We're already quite a ways into this recording.
They're enjoying it. Our listeners are enjoying it. They'll be fine. Okay. First thing. I think looking at Veers, he makes the suggestion that, well, first of all, Veers has a much better handle on the way society works. I mean, when he cautions the Doctor, it's like, yeah, you should listen to your assistant sometimes.
Well, he's probably just more in touch with reality, whereas the scientist is just very narrowly focused on science. And a lot of times people like that, they don't understand that everybody's not like that.
True. And that's kind of the Doctor's failing. And his strength.
Yeah. Well, you sort of have to be like that to be really good at it, right? I mean, you need to be able to completely devote yourself to it.
There's not many scientists who are a little bit interested in the subject. Well, leading on from Veers.
He doesn't have an S at the end of his name. It's just Veer.
Oh, Veers is the guy from Star Wars. Anyway, one of the admirals. Anyway.
Yeah.
So he makes the suggestion that maybe they should, make first contact, that they should explain themselves.
Right.
And again, the Doctor ignores him.
Professor.
And I wonder if part of the problem with the Professor's attitude is that, as we see, they're not very social and have very little interest in other races. So the Professor's reaction, or this race's natural reaction, is not to engage, is not to talk to them. It's almost like staying invisible and watching them and getting all the information and not making first contact because they're mammals. They're endotherms. Who cares about them?
Well, yes, there's that. There's we're so much more evolved. They wouldn't understand, and their technology is crap. And, it's that sort of, we're so much better than everyone else. But he says something to Chakotay at some point that they don't really get along, or they haven't been able to get along with other races.
I wonder why that is.
So they don't have really any experience in it. So, those times when he's saying, or he's not accepting that we need to try to talk to them, it's like, well, it's never worked before.
Oh, so yeah, I see what you mean. Because they're bad at it.
Well, they're bad at it, or I don't know. Is it really just that most of their society thinks they're so superior? It's just not worth the trouble.
I think we get the impression that it's the fact that they think themselves as the first race, as superior.
Yeah.
Why am I talking to these people?
Just stinky mammals.
Well, maybe they're also just, we don't get anything from these people. What benefit? What can we learn? What possible benefit can these people be? So that they're entirely transactional.
I guess at least they haven't turned a bunch of them into slaves. We should be happy about that.
Yeah, that's a plus.
Because they certainly could with their advanced technology.
Yeah. Well, at least some of them seem to have pretty decent ethics and morals. I mean, is Professor Gegen the absolute outlier of actually caring about the crew of Voyager?
Oh, good point. Because the rest of them certainly didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting because we didn't really explore that.
Right.
We couldn't explore everything in this episode, but he clearly, has a good relationship with his daughter. So he's at least got some empathy.
You're right.
Okay. Since we're in overanalysis,
Yeah.
it could also be because he's looking at them all as his evidence that he needs as part of his sciencing. So they're important to him in a different way as well.
Well,
But I think there's a really important moment at the end when he tells Chakotay he's been a colleague and a friend. So he's learned respect by calling him a colleague, but he also realizes we have enough in common that we can be friends.
Yeah.
So he's made a real evolution.
Agreed.
By the end. So that too could have led into him just not being willing to let them all be killed.
So it's almost he's evolved as a person to actually have that moral conscience that maybe he wouldn't have had at the beginning of the episode.
Well, Chakotay's speech may have even moved him. It didn't work on the lady in red, but maybe it worked on Gegen.
That's a really good take, yeah. Okay, I like that.
By the way, the head minister, the lady that I keep calling the lady in red, her name is Odala in the credits, but I'm like, did we ever say her name? I don't think so.
Not in my notes.
Yeah.
Next thing. So the Saurons are 66 million years old. Why did these beings not socially evolve like humans? Humans have had only a few hundred years since their technological ascendance and have already figured out how to run a pretty decent society. From an evolutionary standpoint, humans have only really been around for a few tens of thousands of years. These dinosaurs have had millions of years. How come they don't have a perfect society? Is this a bit of speciesism, mammalian bias, that dinosaurs wouldn't evolve socially like humans?
Well, probably because of their lack of interaction with anybody not exactly like them.
Oh.
Because we talked about this I don't remember which episode, but we talked about what would have happened if nobody had ever left their part of the planet of Earth. If everybody just stayed right in their continent with their exact people.
Yeah.
How different would the world be?
So you think it's really their own self-isolation that caused this?
I think that's possible. It's also possible they went through a phase. Look, this is over millions of years. And then something happened and it changed.
To quote the engineer from Strange New Worlds, just in case that socialist utopia thing didn't work out.
That was very funny. Right? I mean, that's possible.
Interesting.
They could have gone through so many iterations.
Yeah, you've got so much time. Next thing. So is it correct to refer to the Voth as alien? I mean, they're from the same planet as us.
No, they're the first.
Yeah.
They're it. Everybody else is an alien.
If they're from the same planet as us...
Yeah, they're not aliens. Yeah, they're not aliens.
I mean, what do we call them then?
Dinosaurs.
Annoying cousins?
Well, the doctor does say something about Veer being Janeway's distant cousin.
Next thing. I was wondering why no one had encountered them before, or Voyager hadn't even been warned about them, or anybody talked about them. So, I have a theory. They view the other races as lesser and keep to themselves, which I think we've agreed that they do. I'm thinking they're probably cloaked most of the time, and they're so technologically advanced that anybody who tried to come into their space or appeared as a threat, like the Borg, would just be vaporized instantly.
Yeah, never heard from again.
Yeah. So, to a large extent, they've almost managed to keep themselves secret, and people don't know they exist.
Though, you would think it would be more like the Founders in the Delta Quadrant. That it's like mythical almost.
Yeah.
You know, people hadn't necessarily seen them, but knew of them.
Oh.
And also they were sort of secretly running everything. But they had a whole thing about, trying to keep order as they saw it. The dinosaurs aren't like that. Yeah. The dinosaurs, I think they're just not interested in that.
Yeah.
If they want a part of space, they'll just take it.
Well, looking at the Founders as the example, in some ways, they had an almost parental view of all the other races were lesser because they were in chaos.
That's true.
And they used that phrase multiple times. And what they were doing was actually noble.
Yeah.
They were bringing order to chaos.
Yeah. Whereas the dinosaurs, they
don't care.
Exist. They're the first. They don't care about anything else. It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah. You're not a threat to us. You don't have anything we want. Why do we care?
The only true threat is if you call me a refugee. And then I will kill you.
Wow.
What the hell?
And take your ship.
Oh, man. These guys are touchy.
Yeah, that was so good. And I think possibly my last point.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw that the professor made the comment to Veer, not Veers, the guy from Star Wars,
Not Veers.
that there's a traditional mate for his family, that they mate with a different family traditionally.
Yeah.
And perhaps this is the problem. The rigid social structure amongst the Voth has basically caused inbreeding, and the dinosaurs are now de-evolving. They're becoming less intelligent and building up more genetic damage to their genome as time goes on. And their version of the aristocracy wants to maintain their ruling position over the common people, even if it means the race is reduced to brainless idiots. And therefore, punishing and suppressing people like the professor is their go-to for maintaining control.
Well, let me throw this at you.
Okay.
What if the opposite is true? And in order to avoid inbreeding and de-evolving, there are actually scientific plans about which families should breed with which families.
Oh.
And it's about maintaining their, superiority.
Yeah. So it's the opposite. They actually
Maybe
have
it's
a
the opposite.
eugenics program.
Maybe.
They're breeding the, inverted commas, superior dinosaur.
The only reason I say that, because it doesn't necessarily go with this doctrine thing, although maybe it's written in the doctrine, right?
Yeah.
But the only reason I say that is because they've lasted longer than anyone else. So they have to be doing something different.
That's a really good point. The doctrine does actually work for them because they've lasted so long.
Because you're painting a human brush on them, and they're clearly not humans. Yeah. So maybe they've done something completely different in order to survive for so long.
Okay, that's going into a real Star Trek thing of pretty much the aliens we encounter are kind of like, they're kind of like humans, really, but with a few differences, a few little minor tweaks around the edges.
Some ridges.
Yeah, but I think the idea there is really cool that this race is truly alien in terms of its worldview, the method it uses to produce the next generation, and its morals, ethics, the way it behaves. That would make Gegen a true anomaly, that he is completely outside the norm. Wow, I really like that take.
I think I nailed it.
And I think my final point. Cold-blooded dinosaurs. Modern scientific consensus is that majority of dinosaurs were actually warm-blooded.
But these dinosaurs left. The cold ones were the smart ones. They built their spaceships and left.
Oh, okay. And also, they didn't have any feathers.
Yeah, not that we know of.
I mean, the big thing now is they think that dinosaurs had feathers.
It almost would have been funny if they did have feathers. But yeah, we weren't really thinking about that. Where was this episode in relation to Jurassic Park? It was after, right?
Jurassic Park was about 4 years earlier, 93.
Because they talked about dinosaurs being birds, right?
Yeah.
That was the one character's theory.
Yeah, it's his theory. So that wraps up my overanalysis.
You know, we laugh about how a lot of times in Star Trek, they'll take some current movie and they're like, I want to make, I want to do something.
Yeah.
Like we had Donnie Brasco and
Twister last week. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was the War One or whatever. And this is like, if Jurassic Park somehow fed this episode, good job. We went in a totally different direction, which I really appreciate.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know that anything I have is overanalysis, but here's what I have. It's under a bolded section that says overanalysis.
Go.
The dinosaurs putting together the bones of a human, friggin' priceless. That's so funny.
Yes.
Like, we're going to put it together, and then put it in a museum. Genius. Okay, that was just really funny.
And what's funny about that is it's kind of a gag you don't get until you reach the point where the doctor says, it's a dinosaur.
Yeah, totally. It's also very funny about our thought of dinosaurs having tiny brains, and somehow here they're using giant words. Because there's many times where Veer uses a big word, which made me laugh.
Yeah. And
then being more advanced than humans and laughing at the tiny skulls of humans. That's very funny.
22% smaller.
That was very funny.
Yeah.
There's an interesting parallel, of course, to people fighting off science and holding up the Bible or any other religious text in this episode. That's the obvious parallel. The two things can coexist, but sometimes people it's like Chakotay said, fear gets in the way.
Yeah.
And they just can't let go of that thing that they're clinging to. And so you end up with these people who just fight science, right?
They've been doing it since the 1400s. Why change now?
And it just becomes so dangerous, especially when it comes to things like vaccines or any kind of medicine, right? It's so ridiculous for you to hold up an ancient text, whether you believe it to be true or not, but for you to hold that up and say, we have to stop everything else. It's like, I wouldn't even say that the people who wrote that would have said that.
Yeah.
But it's really woven into this episode, and it just, because it's just such a normal thing going back so long, it just fits right into today as well. It's just such a relevant, modern feeling episode on a 30-year-old show.
Is it ever?
Which a couple episodes ago, that stupid one with Harry, where I was like, this one should have aired in the 60s. It fit in the 60s. It does not fit in the 90s, and it certainly doesn't fit now. But this is different. This one fits now, which is a great testament to its quality.
I wish it didn't fit now.
I know.
Really
I know.
do.
The last thing I have in this section is we still don't really know how they got off the planet. If they had developed a whole technological society with space travel, you'd think they would have actually spread out more than just a single continent. That was like a little bit of a hand wave there, but we kind of needed it to explain why haven't we seen this on Earth.
Right.
So that may be the big hand wave of the episode.
Well, it does raise the question as well of after 66 million years, why isn't the entire quadrant full of dinosaur colonies?
Yeah. Because they were keeping to themselves, and it just seems like that was what they did, right? They didn't spread out, they didn't fraternize with other races or other species, and it seems like that is still true today. And as the guy said, we don't really get along with them. Maybe it's because, they're dinosaurs and their brains just work differently, and because they are the cold-blooded species, regardless of what you're talking about with the science that happened afterwards. But I don't know, maybe they just never could intermingle. Well, honestly, like the founders, right? They couldn't ever intermingle with anything unless they could control it.
Yeah, as far as we know, and it didn't appear in the series, the founders never had colonies.
No.
They didn't spread out. They all just wanted to be part of the link.
And maybe that's similar. Mm-hmm.
We know they have 4 colony worlds.
Yeah.
We don't need any more. Why do we need any more?
Maybe. Well, I have a lot more to say, but I'll say it in my rating. I'll go to women in the future. Nothing really to say. In Janeway's leadership corner, Chakotay showed great restraint, and he did his usual thing of de-escalating a potentially dangerous situation just by talking. I mean, that's great leadership.
Very good.
Janeway, she got the guns out.
She got out the big gun again as well. I mean,
she got the big gun, but she didn't get to shoot it. She tried.
Yeah.
But she did at least get to troll the interrogator. So Janeway. So Kirk, right? It was a Janeway Kirk moment, which was really entertaining.
Oh, yeah. With the flippant attitude as well. Perfect.
Yeah. Well, finally, let's go to rating after an hour and, 40 minutes, however long we've been talking. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
2 thumbs up. This is one of my favorite Voyager episodes. I've been avoiding telling you this because I did not want to influence you. This is an episode I have seen enough times that I could do this podcast without a rewatch. Absolutely loved it. It is top-notch science fiction. As well as being a great Star Trek episode, Chakotay delivers a classic Trek speech.
Yep.
Diffusing the situation. I loved the tie-in to his own background of someone who cares greatly about his ancestry and trying to relate that to the Sorens. Brilliantly done. The trial, one of the best Trek trials as well. Absolutely top-notch.
Definitely, yeah.
This is probably the shining episode of this season. Absolute thumbs up.
I don't disagree with anything you said, except maybe saying a shining episode of the season. I would think it's a shining episode of the whole series. This episode is fantastic. All thumbs up. I absolutely loved it. And you didn't need to influence me. I watched it and drew my own conclusion. The irony of the dinosaurs evolving and not believing their own connection to humans is next level. Who wrote this? It's genius.
Yep.
And I would also say, just to echo some of the things you said, Robert Beltran is fantastic in this episode.
Yeah.
You could have argued that maybe it should have been Janeway in the trial or working with the alien, but I think for the reasons you said, but also because Chakotay is so good at de-escalating, right? That was good. As long as it doesn't involve Seska, he's good at de-escalating. But yeah, him trying to say connecting to your ancestors is important and a good thing. It needed to be Chakotay for that.
Yeah.
We already talked about the performances of the lady in red and the person playing Gegen. I mean, it was everybody just doing their best.
Yeah.
And high risk to start an episode without your normal cast. You really have to nail that if you're going to do that. And they really nailed it. It might have been a funny episode, too, if they'd never really engaged with the people on Voyager and they never could see them. They were always invisible. That would have been an interesting episode, too. But then we wouldn't have had Chakotay's great speech and that excellent trial. And these trials they're a thing that Star Trek does so well, and they could go so wrong. And, there have been a few clunkers, but every series has them.
Mars O'Brien on Deep Space Nine, on trial on Cardassia, one of the absolute greats.
Well, there's also the one where Worf is on trial, right?
Oh, yes, that was another good one.
Lots of good examples of it, but this is an awesome episode, and I absolutely loved it. Well, that wraps up Season 3, Episode 22. I feel like we should stop now. Maybe it can't get better. Maybe we're done.
I get exactly what you mean. We could probably talk for another hour about every aspect of this episode. And the guy who wrote it, he's written some clunkers, and then he writes this.
I know, but that doesn't bother me. I think that's normal.
Well, I think it shows, yes, it's normal. I think it shows how... writers can get it so right and so wrong and can produce some great episodes.
It's hard to explain, but this just sort of restores my faith in Star Trek because there have really been some bad episodes lately. And the same thing happened to me on Deep Space Nine in the first season. I was just like, why are we watching this? This is not good. But of course, it eventually picks up as well. Well, we hit Duet, which is very much like this episode.
Yeah.
But Duet happens at the end of season 1. But this brings me back to, Star Trek. Amazing.
Agreed.
Okay, that wraps up Season 3, Episode 23. Come back next week for Episode 24, and we will do it. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at ReBingeIT@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and YouTube at ReBingeIT. Or you can join the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.